My prayers have been answered. We have people finishing the other restroom of the house, which should be done today. And I'll finally be able to shower in my restroom after 2 years. Uh-oh. Okay, so we were supposed to use the board, but because I can't find a marker and I do not want to go to the store right now for just a marker, we're going to, I swear I had it somewhere. We're just going to wing it. Today we will be working on the actual subframe of the car. Now, before we get started, we need to know what the subframe does. Subframe does 3 things. 1, it protects the car, believe it or not, from the bottom. Actually, it does maybe like 4 things. It protects the car or the motor from anything underneath. Purpose number 2, it supports the motor mounts, which supports all the weight of the engine and partial weight of the transmission, even though the transmission has its own mount. Purpose number 3, in this car, the subframe is meant to hold the suspension components in place. And reason number 4, reinforcing the frame rails on the front of the car. Let's get started on the actual subframe. Okay, as you guys can see, the part of the actual subframe where it attaches to the motor is done. So we have that one complete. Reinforce the frame rail from side to side. And then while we do that, it's going to allow this to be more strong so that whenever we attach the suspension to it, it won't drag it out. It needs to be connected from here to here. And while we're at it, we're going to make it purposeful and kind of create like a little bit of a shield here so that if anything scrapes, the oil pan has more protection. And we should have 12 inches and 3/4 from here to here. Cross your fingers. Now what you want to do is not cut through, just make a groove so that whenever you force this, because we don't have an actual metal bending machine, it'll bend directly where you want it to. It'll make more sense in a moment. You guys remember those pieces of aluminum? We're about to use those. So this thick piece of metal here, we're going to clamp down, and then when we apply force, it has no option but to bend exactly on that crease. So I just marked where the oil pan ends so that right after that we can give it a nice little scoop upwards so that worst case scenario, if it does drag, it'll more or less glide over the oil pan and not just smack straight into this lip. Just thinking ahead a touch so that we can avoid crazy stuff. Hopefully it does something. Let me pull this thing out so we can weld the whole thing together. A lot of cold hours and welding later, We are almost there, not exactly done. We have filled in a couple of the sides, trying to structure it a little bit better as much as we can. We'll get there. It just takes some ingenuity, time, and patience. And so I'm going to update you guys once we have it more reinforced. It's pretty simple, and once I finish, it'll be easier to explain. Full disclaimer, half of the ideas that happen are on the fly, so a lot of the times you'll see me modify them more than one time, even after I think I'm done. Count how many times I change clothes. And by the way, every time I change clothes does not mean it's another day. It just means I was probably doing something else. Or I was welding. I have a specific sweater for welding. I know it doesn't look like it, but adding weight is the last thing I'm trying to do. But you have to add weight if you're going to add structure. Someone out there asked if I recommended steel it for a welding table. The answer is a solid no, unless you have serious moisture problems like me. So the thing is, if I didn't put steel it, I would have already had to clean this thing 2 or 3 or 4 times since I did the steel it. So in my case, it's good because it's like paint, but does it work like a regular welding table? No. You would have a hard time getting a good ground for your welding. So would I do it again? Yes, for my circumstance, but I still have to clamp my object directly to the machine. Otherwise it won't have a proper contact. So you be the judge. Let me show you around before well, I guess I could paint it first. I'll paint it first, then I'll show you around. All right, let's let it dry for a sec, then I'll come back so we can get our hands on it and I'll show you exactly what we did, how we did it, and so forth. So while we're waiting for this part to dry, let me show you guys the cuteness of a little calf we have, 3 days old, and she is like, she has the zoomies and everything. Oh, yeah, by the way, ignore this little hit. I was in downtown and I had a little fun, but we have something coming real quick, so don't worry about the truck. Look at this thing, 3 days old. She's not exactly being active right now, but I'll throw a couple clips of earlier today. What Mother Nature does with everything. It's newborn running. How is that possible? You guys can see it's still kind of drying, and I'm not too crazy worried about how good it looks. To me, it's just for rust. All right, first thing is first. So what we did is essentially we folded it, made our own pan for the oil pan underneath, kind of like a skid plate. And at first we had left just a small slope here, and we ended up putting a thick piece of metal because this is going to most likely get hit. So we need a little bit more structure in this area. And then we followed it with a couple of small bars to the actual subframe itself. And then from here, it obviously attaches to the car. So this will give it a lot more structure, just these little pieces. And then on the top, we tied it in all together. We kind of boxed in this little corner here and this little corner here so that they are essentially one with this piece and this piece. If you guys can see, the structure will follow it all the way across here, and hopefully that is enough to keep it from flexing. I can't add much more without adding more weight, and we're trying to avoid more weight. You guys can see in the back, we did as much as we could in terms of cornering it so that we can add structure to the back. We cannot really do much back here because it is a tight fit. The only way we could add more structure back here is bringing it out farther, but I don't know if that's an option yet. We're gonna have to wait because we still don't even have our steering rack in. Once we have our steering rack, then we can start to modify this rear end a little bit better. So pretty much from here back is still to be determined, and up here is pretty much finalized. I'm gonna try to apply some pressure to see if you guys can see the flex. There is hardly any flex in this. So I mean, it's pretty strong. I weigh a solid almost 200 pounds and it's not budging with me. Obviously, once you have torque and all that, it all varies. But for now, we're going to stick with it. We're gonna run with it and install it in the car, see how she fits. Hopefully it goes on the first try. Cross your fingers, it'll go in without a fuss. And just like that, hopefully my face isn't a mess. It usually is, and I don't realize it until I'm editing this video because I don't have a mirror in the shop, which I might have to do. We had 4 things we had to focus on. One was the obvious, which was structure from side to side with the frame rail. We have achieved that with our pieces of metal that we have reinforced to give it more structure as much as we could. Number 2 was protection of the oil pan. I'd say we went above and beyond in doing that. We have made a whole kind of like a casing for it, so it should be just fine from the elements. Number 3, the suspension. Suspension is exactly where it was. Nothing has been moved whatsoever. The only thing we had to address is the steering rack. We'll get there soon enough. And number 4 was for the motor mounts, and you guys can see the engine is attached. It is all there. Everything is playing nice. So it may have taken a little bit more work than just bolting on parts. We didn't adapt the spacers. We didn't put a spacer in between the frame rail and the subframe. So everything should handle exactly the same. It's gonna be a little bit heavier for sure. But I guess we will cross that bridge once we get to it. For a lot of you guys out there, I know it's weird. I'm probably gonna get a lot of hate because I'm doing things different, maybe in an unsafe manner. But the reality is, I think the part we're missing as a whole, a lot of people, they just like to go with the flow, something that's been proven already. And while I understand that that may be like security or a bit of a safety, you know, you can go to something and be sure it's gonna work, usually. This is not a sure way of doing things, but I'll tell you what, we are learning a lot as we go, and that is what we are about here, doing things we haven't done before and never stop learning. I think that's one of the things I can take away from everything I do, is that I try to never stop learning, because the second you stop learning, I think you stop living. Like I said, we will only know once we are in the track. But yeah, so thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for subscribing. Hit the post notifications if you haven't done so already. And we're gonna have a couple different videos here and there. They're not all gonna be 86 stuff, because as much as you guys love 86 stuff, there are some normal people out there that like other things. And so yeah, we will be addressing multiple things at once, and hopefully soon enough I will have more time to put more effort into everything. With that being said, thank you guys for watching. We'll see you guys next week. Peace out.